Hello, welcome everyone. We are exposing mold. I'm here with Eric. Keely is not with us today. We do wish her well, though. She's a little busy mama bear over there. But we wanted to open up another community group Q&A because our last one was so successful that we wanted to offer another one for this week and see what you guys wanted to ask. Since we're here, feel free to ask away. One thing that did happen, which was really interesting, shout out to Chemical Free Gal. She is one of our wonderful associates. She sent me this post. And, our favorite thing is we love to harp on the mold experts, right? You guys know us. But they said something really interesting. And so I guess they hired a mold consultant or a mold coach. It looks like these people are popping up everywhere. But basically, this person is saying that there's a lot of fear surrounding mold, and that people who promote mold avoidance and listening to your body are just instilling fear in the community. This consultant had told this person that it's fine to stay in their moldy home and for whatever time length they needed to, even if it was really bad. And they also mentioned that they should get an air filter and they start taking a plant-based supplement powder along with other supplements, and they shouldn't give in to the mold avoidance hype. um, Eric, what do you think about this comment here? What these other quote unquote mold consultants are telling people about mold avoidance?
Well, that's just totally insane. I mean, you, it's amazing how people come up with this stuff. If you burned yourself in the kitchen and somebody said, well, avoiding hot pots is a good idea, would that be instilling fear in you? Oh no, just grab anything indiscriminately. Don't let fears dominate your mind. If there's rattlesnakes out there, don't be worried about snakes. They're not all toxic. They're not all venomous. So why create a needless fear? Well, anybody that says that's just trying to, you know, do that power tripping, dominate the discourse uh, tactic, so they can shift you into whatever thing they want to instill in your mind. Whereas when something is toxic, it's just common sense that avoidance is better than not avoiding it.
Absolutely. I had posted this on our Instagram account and I said that, these type of mold consultants are basically leading people to their deaths and also draining them financially. I mean, mold avoidance is not cheap. We all know that. But, when you have these people recommending these band-aid solutions like air filters and supplements, and also saying, well, you can stay in your highly toxic home if you just take this, this, and this. Oh, and here's my link. So I can collect on this. It just seems more like they care about themselves and their bottom line and not people, I guess you can say. And so it's just really dangerous advice. And Eric, you've seen this over the years with other mold experts and mold consultants providing information to people about, getting this air filter and that, and just, being able to stay in the toxic home. It's completely fine. And you've actually seen people literally die or kill themselves because of this. Is this correct?
Yeah, I call these people the helpful advice givers. They seem to fill up the groups and they're just full of all this good and helpful advice. You can take this supplement or that supplement or buy the most expensive air filter or these HEPA vacuums and wash everything with ammonia and bleach and vinegar and God knows what. And if you're in a really toxic place, none of that's going to do you a damn bit of good. And all these people are doing is lulling them into a false sense of security so they stay there longer and get sicker and have more expensive stuff to abandon when they're finally forced out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we created our education group and we have our podcast, because we like to provide this information that you can actually help yourself by just using your own senses. You don't have to buy the most expensive air scrubber, purifier, and all of this stuff. I mean, if you're living in a toxic, super toxic home, you either A, have to decide if you should stay there, or B, put money up for remediating, which doesn't always provide 100%, I guess, success rate. So again, you guys, this is our community Q&A group. This is just for you. And if you guys have any questions or anything that's been on your mind that you're not getting answers to, or you have trouble finding answers to, we are here to help you. So please post any comments below this video and let us know what it is that you want to know about toxic mold, mold avoidance, and the whole CFS paradigm. Let us know. We do have a few people here. I have Andrea saying that she's been sick for 8.6 years and she's disabled and no help. Now, why do you think this is such a common thing, Eric, where so many people are not receiving the help that they need?
Well, a lot of this is thanks to the helpful advice givers. They get in these groups and they convince the world that mold is easy. Buy an air filter. Just retrain your brain. Don't worry about it. And they have done such a good job of minimizing this devastating situation. They actually, even in the act of claiming to be mold advocates, are their own worst enemy, creating this whole air that if you have a mold problem, it's your personal genetic problem and it's easily dealt with. So that's why people can't get any help.
Yeah, and Andrea said that she has 4 air filters in her house. And I think this is a great example of her being sick and not getting help and still taking the advice of an expert. I'm assuming someone told you to get some air filters and it's still not helping your condition. This is a prime example of what's going on right now, is all of this crazy advice on supplements and all of this stuff. And it's nothing to do with what are some strategies we can use to implement in our day-to-day life that actually just means experimenting, seeing how we feel in places and taking that and basing our decisions on if we should stay in a particular location or not. I have Samaya Wood says, thank goodness for honest people. Yes, thank you. Sometimes being honest doesn't always mean that you're the most popular or the most successful, but it doesn't matter, because the truth is what is most important in integrity, and helping people that way. We're not here to push stupid treatments or remedies on you because they're not always super helpful. There are things that you can use to mitigate symptoms, but nothing is ever going to replace getting out of a bad environment and using your senses to guide you thereafter. We have Sherry Crowell Shepherd. Thank you. I would love to know about testing our blood. I hear people say that they can test us, but I can't find info anywhere. I am in Canada. Do you have any information on that, Eric?
Well, I used to want to believe that there were tests, that these good and sincere doctors were really trying to come up with ways to help us and looking for demonstrable, reproducible abnormalities in our blood. And every time I look over these people doing the blood work, these blood tests, I find, especially with the dark field microscope, oh yeah, look, every little squiggly thing is a spirochete. Or I can see mold. I can see mold growing in your blood. And they just make up stuff. And they have so completely destroyed my trust that I don't believe that there's any reliable blood testing, period.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, there's so many limitations to these different types of testings that, it's a hit or miss. And I understand that they have their place. If you need to use it for a case, or you want to prove to yourself or your family or whatever the case. They can be useful, but most of the time, the technology is just not advanced enough to really show a full picture of what's going on. We see a lot of people who do like urine mycotoxin testing, for example, that, you know, they don't, they found mycotoxins and then they detox for a while and then they don't find the toxins anymore, but they're still feeling sick. And so there's so many ups and downs with these types of tests. And we've talked about this in the past. Samaya Wood here says, remember for 100 years, the medical world denied acceptance of the deadly cause of tobacco consumption. Do you have any comments, Eric, on that one?
Yeah, that was pretty sneaky how they did that, because they never said that the evidence didn't exist. They just kept going on how it was inconclusive and maybe it didn't apply to everybody. And they just made cigarettes so cool and even paid for placement of cigarettes in movies and in magazines. And they just made it appear to be such a low risk thing that even though the evidence was always out there, people ignored the risk. And we say this the same psychological operation going on with mold. I mean, they know, and they know it's harmful. They know it's got the potential for serious damage. And if you confront them, they won't really deny it, but they'll just minimize it in such a way that it doesn't really impact you as being all that important.
All right, guys. Sorry about that. My internet went out. Um, is everything all good, Eric? Did you answer her
Yep.
question? Okay, great. We'll move on to Andrea. How do people start? I am fighting every second of my life.
Get to a hotel room and leave everything behind. Take absolutely nothing with you, not even a toothbrush. Um, the things that you really, can't leave behind, like your car keys or a telephone, put them in a Ziploc bag and get them as far away from you as possible. But get to a safe place, change into some clothes that aren't from your suspect environment, put your other ones outside, and take a lot of showers. See how you feel. And if you come into contact with your clothing or anything that was brought from the suspect location, and you feel the slightest downturn from it, any exacerbation of symptomology at all, then believe it. Don't doubt your symptoms. Just trust that you actually are reacting to this minute exposure. And once you learn to trust that this is really happening, then you can make educated decisions on whether or not you even dare go back to your environment.
Yeah, I would like to just piggyback on that and say this is what saved me from my second exposure. I did exactly this. And, it was so bad that I couldn't even tolerate my husband. He had to be in another room. So I know a lot of people want to be with someone during the time that they're feeling ill, but if you can, just go into a room by yourself with new clothing and constantly changing your sheets, reusing towels. And that's a good thing about a hotel is that you can do that, at any time. Get the cleaning crew in there every day to make sure the room is clean. And how can one vet a mold free room, Eric?
Well, at first it's really difficult because you tend to be masked. You're not really capable of sensing it very well. I've heard of people who actually went to a hotel and it was so much worse at their house that the reverse effect, the fact that they got so much worse, told them, well, I didn't find a good place, but at least I know that it is environmental because it's here too. Um, this one osteopath, Dr. Joseph Klein, he went through 40 hotel rooms before he found one where he really felt good. Wow. Yeah, it's a pretty desperate situation. But that's how you start out, is by experimenting and just seeing if you can tell a difference relative one place to the next. And if you go in, first of all, just breathe, try to sense if there's anything that just doesn't feel right about the place. And if you can't sense anything straight off, I try to check out the bathroom because that's where mold typically will be the worst, behind the shower. So check out the bathroom first, and then whoever, like if you rent a hotel room or you're just prospecting a place but you haven't rented it yet, try to pretend to be looking under the bed. Just say, Joe, I wonder if there's anything under the bed here, and lay down on the floor for a second. Get your face close to the floor. Take a couple of deep breaths. And if you get heart palpitations or feel like there's something on the floor, then that's a reject because mold tends to accumulate on horizontal surfaces. So if you can just lay down flat and it makes your heart start to pound, then keep moving.
It's a great indicator. I know that some people will freak out if they go into one room and they're like, "Oh, this is a bad hotel," and they'll leave. But I really think it's worthwhile and valuable to check multiple rooms within the building because there could be some bad rooms and some good rooms. And another thing too is I've been in the hotel rooms or hotels in general where their lobbies felt bad, but their rooms felt good. So there's a lot of factors to consider, and I know it's quite hard. And that's why we do offer consultations for you to provide us with your situation, and we can go ahead and help you develop a plan that would be more tailored to your situation. So please feel free to check us out, exposingmold.com/consultations. I will leave it in the comments here. We have Monica. That's her question is there a reliable, pristine area in Northern California?
I think most of it is. When I cruise around in Northern California, once I get out to the woods, it tends to be all good.
Yeah, I know that there was a fire recently or last year near Willow Creek. Do you think that would possibly change that area within Northern California?
No, I don't find any direct relationship between fire activity and the toxic stuff. I
Okay.
have found that areas that were firebombed with that borate, from the air, the planes go over, they drop that red crap all over the place. I have found places that were heavily firebombed to put out forest fires that felt pretty bad for years afterward. But it didn't seem to spread out beyond the area where the bombing had happened. And I actually wondered, am I reactive to the fire retardant? And I wanted to make sure, so I went to the loading platform at the airport, and I didn't react to it. So that kind of convinced me that the mold, the microbes, whatever's in that area is processing the flame retardant into a super toxin.
Yeah, because I always feel like there's a lot of people that talk about how they're sensitive to frat, right? That's the nickname for fire retardant. And so I'm just really curious as to like what that's about. And you basically described that. So thank you, Eric. Um, I do know that Elizabeth said, "What if we can't leave?" So what if a person cannot leave their moldy home?
Well, about all you can expect is that if you continue to get worse, you're going to wind up in a very bad place.
Yeah, so leaving is definitely most important. 101 trying to get out, and that will definitely help for sure. Um,
Yeah,
go
all
ahead.
these things that people try, like 4 air filters, so often that tends to be false economy. That money would have been far better spent on a hotel room.
Yeah, I mean, time is of the essence and money is of the essence with this issue with mold. And there, if I could go back, in the beginning of my journey, I would have done so much, just so many things differently because we'd spent money on foggers and just so much stupid stuff that people have provided us with advice saying you need this air filter and that air filter, and it just nothing worked. And by that time it's like you can't reclaim that money back. So being able to really develop a plan and strategy on how to get out and the best economical way of doing things, I think is important, especially nowadays. I mean, everything is so expensive, gas, just commodities. It's just getting a little crazy out there. Um, have Amy here that says, what are your thoughts on the keto diet? I'm trying to eliminate from fat cells. I'm guessing she's thinking that mold is accumulating in her fat cells, and she's thinking that keto might be a good remedy for that.
Well, it seems like we're really chewing up the protein, uh, and people have theorized that by eating a lot of red meat, they'll get more L-carnitine and somehow support what is being lost by this inflammatory process. And I tried it myself, and I don't know, maybe I felt a very slight difference. But once I got into mold avoidance, I completely lost interest in all diets and all supplements and anything nutritional to try to address this. I just put all my effort into mold avoidance because that's where I get the most bang for the buck.
Yeah, I mean, I have my master's in nutrition and I feel like it's just a waste. Like, I feel like my degree has been a waste because so many people that have these food allergies and whatever, unless you've had it since birth, it's probably something to do with your environment, right, Eric?
I'd strongly suspect it, especially seeing how rapidly this phenomenon has taken off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before when I was in a moldy environment, I could barely eat anything. I was probably eating like three things. That's all I could tolerate, or else I would go into anaphylaxis. And as soon as I was able to get out and get into strict mold avoidance, I mean, I can eat pizza and I can do whatever I want. I mean, I'm not eating that every day, but I can enjoy that and not feel like I'm going to end up in the hospital, which is great.
Yeah, that's like a red flag. If you go to a mold group and start asking questions about diet, and the first thing they do is suggest all the various things that you can cut out of your diet or the things that you can try or how this is just an allergy that you have to deal with. They're not a mold expert. They don't understand this phenomenon. They haven't witnessed how people get out and go back to eating normal food. So if anybody just comes right back with how they're going to change your diet and save your life that way without going, well, actually, mold avoidance might accomplish in days what years of special diets never accomplished, then I would consider that they really don't understand this phenomenon.
Yes. I mean, it's understandable if people want to eat healthier, whatever the case, that's fine. But if you're focusing just on diet while living in a moldy home, you're not going to get anywhere. Um, so I have Samaya Wood here. I'm probably the only 5-foot woman that won a mold case of my brand new home against a builder and 49 subcontractors. I can walk in a home and instantly both my arms go numb on a daily basis. I
Uh-oh.
educate MD.
Alicia's,
Oh, darn. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, thank God. I hope I don't cut out again. Sorry, guys. I can walk in a home and instantly both my arms go numb. On a daily basis, I educate MDs, store owners, classrooms, etc., planning to go to Hawaii and see what happens. Are you guys there? Can you see
Yeah.
me? Okay, good. Okay.
Hawaii can be really bad. A lot of moldies have problems with the VOG.
You know what? I can attest to that. And it's so funny that you say that, Eric, because when I lived there, when the VOG hit, oh man, it would knock me out. And at that time, I just thought, I didn't know I was a moldy. I didn't even know mold can make me sick. But every time that rolled in, I was bedridden and it was really strange. So it's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, to win a really powerful case like that, the place must have been terrible.
Yeah, we would really love to know more, Samaya. We should talk on behind the scenes here and learn more about your situation. Elizabeth says, I can within an hour and I'll be coughing. I'm guessing she means be in a moldy environment. So you can see here how a moldy environment can change symptomatically from person to person. Like Samaya says, her legs and arms go numb. Elizabeth starts coughing. Me, if I'm in a really bad place, I can't walk, I can't talk. It's just really interesting how it manifests. How did it manifest for you, Eric, when you hit really bad buildings?
Well, it was really amazing to go back to the same place, school, and get different symptoms. Someday it would be burning, sometimes heart palpitations, sometimes a sense of pure chemical toxicity, and my arms and my ankles would go numb. And other times my eyes would burn and my throat. It was like, how is it that one colony can put out so many different toxins? But the common denominator, the thing that I learned to worry about the most, were the intense heart palpitations. Because no matter what else was going on, if I got really bad heart palpitations, then I was going to be in the hurt.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's so crazy how the symptoms can vary. And then you wonder, like, what's going on? Am I reacting to something else? Like, why is it so different?
Well, mold produces not just one toxin, but many different toxins. And, it's variations on a theme. So they know that even one species will produce different types of toxins at different times. So this idea that you're going to get one mold with one particular symptom from it is highly misguided.
Thank you for that. I think my internet's going out again. Can you guys see me? Yay. Sorry guys. I
The
don't know why
joys of an iffy internet.
my internet. I'm in the middle of nowhere, so I'm so sorry. We're trying our best here. Keely Severson, my soul sister here says, "Oh, I love the bird concert in the background." I was just going to comment that with Eric. I was like, "We can hear the birds participating in our Q&A here in Tahoe." We have Andrea here that says, "People think I'm crazy, but I know I'm not. I'm so sick of people judging us like we're crazy loons that, are just going off our rockers. It's super annoying."
And I'm sick and tired of mold experts profiting off on our desperation without going to the CDC, NIH, or institutes like Harvard and Stanford and standing up for us.
Amen for that. Amen. I love that. You most certainly have been doing that for a very long time. And I'm just curious as to what has been their response to you.
Well, I brought enough evidence there that they couldn't deny it, so they didn't try. Instead, they had a fallback plan. They said, well, what you say can't really be important or relevant or highly prevalent because you're the only one here. If this were really important, there would be more of you here, and there never is. It's only you. So I said, well, I'll come back next year with more people. But unfortunately, every year it's just me.
All right, Eric. Well, it's not just you anymore. It's me and Keely, and God knows who else is willing to come and caravan with us over there. So I'm ready when you are. When we come visit you, maybe we can think about taking a trip down to Stanford, and I can go see my old coworkers, and we can go and knock on Ron Davis's door and say, "Hey, what's going on over here?" That would
Yeah,
be
the Stanford CFS clinic. We should just go down there and pack their waiting room and say, listen, we got something to say about this deal.
Oh man, that would be a really good idea. Anyone in the Bay Area willing to do that? Monica, would you come and caravan with us? That would be great if we can try to get a lot of people. Even like maybe start a little protest or something. That would be a good idea. I have Samaya here. Whoa, this is pretty cool. Lexus, Toyota, and Mercedes have been sued for mold issues. I heard about Toyota, but not Lexus and Mercedes. All car dealers paid to settle lawsuits. Check Google coverage for this. We will definitely check that out. Have you heard anything about that, Eric? About the
Oh
vehicles?
yeah. In fact, there's one brand of car, not Audi, some German brand, I think, that they had mold growing in a filter that was not really replaceable. It's like it had a pre-filter or something and you couldn't get at it. And so there was a big deal about that because it was growing toxic mold and there was no convenient way to just swap it out and clean the system.
Oh, that sucks for them.
But
Uh,
whoever heard of this kind of stuff before? I mean, this is
right?
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I
What's
never.
going on?
The mold is changing. That's what's going on, right,
What's
Eric?
really fascinating to me is that when chronic fatigue syndrome erupted back in the 80s, there was a support group down in Reno, and I would go down there and I'd try to talk about my mold observations, and they would talk about their cars. And they'd say, the air conditioner is trying to kill me. They go, something is in the air conditioner. And I'd go, oh, yeah, I know that effect because when you're driving down the road and you go through one of these plumes, all of a sudden it feels like whatever's being spit out of your air conditioner, more so than just the ventilation. There's something about going through an air conditioner where it just feels worse. But then eventually it would die down. The contamination might last for a while, but it lasted long enough that they would get this idea that there must be mold growing in their air conditioning system. I go, well, do you feel it now? No, but I felt it, so therefore it's got to be in there. And it never occurred to them that there could be a plume blowing across the room or across the road, and just by going through it, it could be blown right in their faces, and they could have a reaction to it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's why this whole phenomenon is so complicated that you have to be wary of those type of minute details, right, Eric, to really understand like what's going on and to make you just a little bit more knowledgeable in what's happening so you don't just say my car is messed up and I'm going to go sell it tomorrow. We're kind of in a situation where inventory is pretty low on vehicles. I mean, my husband and I had a hell of a time trying to find a vehicle out here in the desert, mind you. So many were extremely contaminated. I mean, I sit in it and like something is stabbing my heart. We're driving and I'm literally jumping out of the vehicle. It's so contaminated. And so it's like it's slim pickings out there. So you really have to take into consideration these things that just because you're having a reaction in your vehicle, it might not necessarily be just the vehicle, but you're driving through a plume and it's going through the vehicle. Elizabeth Mosher said, I had remediation. So Elizabeth is sick, and from what we know, she cannot leave her moldy home, and she had remediation. This is a great example of what we just talked about earlier, that remediation is not always 100% guarantee. A lot of these remediation companies are doing very poor jobs. And sometimes a home, you just can't turn it around, right, Eric?
Yeah, that's what they observed back in the 1980s, that up until then, if you had a mold problem, you could clean it up, put a fan on it, spray it with bleach, paint over, no problem. All of a sudden, that wasn't the case anymore. And why was this? What was different? And when they pointed at the mold, when patients got sick and said, that's what's making me sick, and they tested it, the dreaded black mold Stachybotrys showed up. This seemed to be the difference between normal molds and this new phenomenon of people not getting better. But as soon as the mold experts jumped into the game, they said, well, we can test for aspergillus, penicillium, cladosporium, fusarium. We can test for a million, volemia, all these different things. And they would always blame whatever they found the most of. So people would flood the internet going, well, they found most aspergillus, so that's what made me sick. They never stopped to think, well, aspergillus is a mold that's just about everywhere. It's almost impossible not to find aspergillus in the air. So, are you really sure that that's what made you sick? Or did the expert just say that because that's what was easy to find?
Yeah, and I wonder like how many homes are actually in good areas, but they're just receiving just extremely bad botched remediations. Like there's not a lot of people doing what Michael Rubino and All American Restoration is doing out there, where they're remediating, they're finding the source, they're replacing the materials, they're doing this hyper intricate HEPA vacuuming, wiping all this stuff down. I wonder like how successful, that is.
Well,
If
look at Shemaine Nugent. I mean, she had this new house built for her that was supposed to be so great. So they go in thinking that it's all fine. And she walked in and she could feel it. And she went right to the place and pointed at the spot where it was growing mold and forced them to look. They didn't want to, but she forced them to. And they found it right where she pointed.
I know. I can't believe her situation. I mean, they had gotten out of a moldy home and then paid builders, special builders, to build them a completely new home on a beautiful piece of property. And the home still had problems, and they're now in a lawsuit with them, right? I mean, this is bizarro land, I feel like. Like, this is happening to them again.
But the way she handled it was perfect. I mean, she trusted her senses. And when they tried to talk her out of there being any mold in this beautiful new house, she insisted and she said, "It's right there. And damn you, you better go look." And they found it right where she said it was going to be.
Right? So all those, mold consultants that say don't live by your senses, man, if she didn't use her senses, I mean, she would, I don't know, have to sell the home and move again and go through all that mess when
Yes,
literally all she
buy
had to
more
do was
air filters that do nothing.
oh yeah, right. Buy more junk, waste more money. Yeah, it's just nuts. We have Jean Marie Phillips. How do you know where the mold is, if not visible, to rectify the problem and return to a safer environment? That really coincides with what we just talked about.
Yeah, those of us who have been made hypersensitive, we find it so easily by using our senses that we can do it with our eyes closed.
Yeah, and there are really good inspectors out there too that are extremely thorough. Josh from Texas Mold Inspectors, the mold guy, Mark Levy, who else? Brian Carr. A lot of these people that are testing, especially for hypersensitive individuals, they seem to be successful and in helping find locations. But I think really it's up to you and honing in on your senses and knowing what your symptoms are when you feel how you are in a certain area, in certain exposures. I think that's really going to be your best bet. Andrea says, I need help. I feel crazy nuts. I know this is just it's such a hard thing, Andrea. And if you are looking for help, we are here for you. Please send an email to exposingmold@gmail.com and maybe we can figure something out. Okay, my dear. Elizabeth here says she has brain fog, vision disturbance when it gets really bad. So bad, I can't even drive. Yep, that is a lot of us. Definitely have had those symptoms before. Andrea is saying that I should leave and is sending us a heart. We're sending you a heart and hugs back. Adam Lewis is saying, Alicia, are you in a casita? How's that going? Oh gosh, to try to get a casita right now is just insane. They're back ordered. For our needs right now, we're actually in an R pod, which is made out of Asdale material, which again, it's not always 100%, but it's been perfect for us. We've been in it for 2 months and we are extremely diligent on everything, making sure if there's any leaks or anything, like being on top of it. But so far, so good. Anytime we're in a good environment, I feel great. I mean, this thing is amazing. And it's pretty small. I mean, it's, I don't know, 22 feet. It has the basics. We're outside most of the time. And we're just enjoying life, living in beautiful campgrounds and breathing in good air. So, um, Andrea here is saying, I have so much anger. I want to get through this and help others. Girl, that's exactly why I'm here with Eric and Keely, and Exposing Mold is here. And Eric has been doing this for so long because it's just like, when you know about the mold issue and the liability and the cover-ups, and just makes you so darn angry, and just knowing like what you went through and how bad you felt and how much you've lost. I mean, we've lost so much money, all of our stuff, friendships. I mean, it's a life destroyer, and I get it. But thankfully, there is a community of people like us who are here to validate what's going on and also to provide you with information on how to mitigate it. It's literally providing you tools and education on how to navigate mold injuries and also mold exposures. We're not here to sell you a gamut of garbage that isn't going to help your situation. Did you want to say anything, Eric, to that?
Just that I'm really disgusted by the way our academics and our professionals have handled this situation. They were
Yeah.
supposed to be the defenders of public health, to step up and cooperate, collaborate, make change, make progress, work together. And instead, they all jumped in to profit off our desperation.
I know it's really disgusting, and that's why we're so, I mean, we don't hold anything back. You guys know how we are. We're really on top of these people because we're just so tired of that. I mean, how much more corruption and how much longer are you going to hold this off as a non-issue? And it's a major issue. People are losing everything. And that's why we're here doing the best we can to fight for you guys, and also help you as well. Samaya Wood says, "Me too, will always be a mold activist. Mold in cars are primarily in the AC of cars. Did you know that biological weapons are mold?" Yes, we've seen the Army chapter on trichothecene mycotoxins. And what is it? Is it yellow fever, Eric? I think
Yellow
that's what.
rain in Cambodia.
Yellow rain. That's what they were testing in Cambodia. Yeah, we do know, and maybe that's why they don't want to talk about Stachybotrys, because it is a biological weapon or can be used as a biological weapon, and so they don't really want people to know that, because then, you know, if you have an enemy, maybe that person will, send over a piece of Stachybotrys drywall to them. I mean, I don't know. So it's kind of a controversial situation.
Well, that's
Do
already been done. People
what?
have deliberately introduced Stachybotrys into houses and watered it to make the house good and toxic for purposes of harassment.
Really? Wow. Okay. So I did not know that, Eric. What is the story and the scoop on that?
Well, for various reasons, people have a need to either make somebody a believer in toxic mold, so they give them a little taste of it, or back before the insurance companies wrote exclusions for toxic mold,
Mhm.
back when they just went ahead and covered it, there were unscrupulous people who would buy an old house and run water hoses in it, just soak it down and make it so
Whoa.
toxic that the whole place would have to be demolished and collect on the insurance.
Holy crap.
So
You,
naturally, the insurance companies, when they got wind of that, they leaped to write massive, massive exclusions, and you can't really blame them.
yeah, I mean, right? It's like everyone has a mold issue these days. If they were helping everyone out with their mold issue, I feel like we wouldn't have insurance agencies. They go bankrupt. They can't meet the
Yeah, they were
demand.
they were really crude back then. I mean, there were people literally running garden hoses inside of a house, but their thieves are cunning, and you could create a water leak without much difficulty, make it look like a normal water leak. Just neglect it for a while, let the toxic mold go. So yeah, the insurance companies really were forced into a position where they had to go overboard and backlash against this kind of thing.
Wow. Very interesting. Oh man, here's a loaded question, Eric. We might want to get your in a nutshell explanation from Christine Karen. Eric, can you explain how mold was responsible for the Incline Village chronic fatigue syndrome? How is it that such a large population was exposed? Was it in every building or in the local environment? Just trying to understand how a village can be sick from mold simultaneously.
Wow, that's what Dr. Cheney said. How can a entire, because I told them about the sick buildings and they believed it because it was obvious. I mean, the two high schools and the casino, people came out of there talking about how the building made them sick. But Dr. Cheney couldn't see any mechanism for all these buildings to simultaneously get worse. Well, it just so happened that we had an algal bloom at the time. The north shore of Lake Tahoe felt like a sick building. We had this blue green algae. It was weird. I went to the beach hoping to get a breath of fresh air because I was feeling really bad. And instead of feeling better, I got down near the water, felt a burning sensation. My face went numb. I mean, it's like, I'm dying down here. What is it? So I proposed to Dr. Cheney that maybe the algal bloom was either adding a similar type of toxin that together with the normal effect of the sick buildings was overwhelming people's immune systems, or possibly that the toxins were born on the wind and got into the water, feeding these mold colonies and made them more toxic. And this was something I really hoped to ask researchers, good chronic fatigue syndrome researchers, when they came to gather clues and study the Incline Village outbreak. And much to my amazement, once the CFS definition was written, not a single doctor or researcher ever came to get more clues. They talked to Cheney and Peterson about the viral titers or the immunological evidence, but there was no epidemiology that was ever done. No questions were ever asked about the sick buildings, the algal bloom, or any of the circumstantial evidence that could tie all this together.
Yeah, I was so shocked that your people living in your area requested for an environmental impact report and they declined. Like, why? That's weird to me.
Well, they were asking for an environmental impact report for the cloud seeding,
Yeah.
and that was fended off because they said you have no proof that cloud seeding causes any kind of environmental damage.
Okay, so there was no environmental impact report requested when the algae bloom happened.
In a way, there was, because people saw that there was changes in the water supply. People were getting sick from the sewer systems. The public utility district, the manager, had workers reporting that there was something deadly in the sewer system, in the storm drains, down in the utilities, and these were strong, reliable men with no history of hysteria or depression or any reason to complain about such things. And after a few simultaneous reports of something in the water that was making them sick, they tested the water supply with every known test that they had available. And they found some surprises, but nothing that would account for it. But as a result of this, they instituted chlorination, which had not been the case previously. And they became much more attentive to sewage spills. And after a while, the phenomenon died down. It carried on for about a year, as long as the algal bloom lasted. And eventually it went away. And in the lack of any conclusive findings, the whole incident was forgotten, and none of these clues were ever taken into consideration.
Wow. So what did they find in the water?
Well, they found amoeba. They found a few bacteria that they weren't expecting, fecal bacteria, hence the instant chlorination.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they they didn't find hydrogen sulfide or anything that would account for a worker getting close to a manhole cover and feeling sick from it. That's automatic for hydrogen sulfide. And yet this seemed to blow for quite a distance away from the storm drains. So it didn't really fit the profile, and they were suspicious. But there again, no research was ever done. All they did was apply existing tests, find nothing, and conclude that there was nothing to find, and eventually forgot about it.
Wow. So what do you think happened with the storm drains, just in your own theoretical perspective?
Well, we know now that the cyanotoxins from an algal bloom do get carried up into the wind. They do go for a long distance. And when you look at the areas where people got sick downwind of the algal bloom, it really, I mean, make a choropleth map, and it looks like these spores were blowing for a certain distance, getting into the water, and affecting everybody low level, such that they would then start to complain about the sick buildings and light up with all these fungal and bacterial and viral infections.
Wow. Very interesting. Thank you for that, Eric. Christine, I hope that answered your question. I have Andrea that says this is not right. Yes, I absolutely 100% agree. Jean Marie Phillips says, "Oh yes, the smell of the AC and it smells musty and mold." Now, ACs don't necessarily always have to smell musty and moldy in order for them to be moldy, right, Eric?
No, that was the amazing thing that somebody could just drive through and it would somehow modify the spores, the fragments. They would somehow alter it in such a way as to make it more bioavailable. And that led me to do experiments with passing toxins through a venturi, putting them through a fan to see if it actually made it feel worse to me. And I had some success with that. I found that a venturi actually would alter what was in the air. I took a building that I knew was somewhat sick, but I got used to how it felt, and then I would position myself in front of an air filter, in front of a fan, and all of a sudden my heart would start pounding, and it felt worse. So I came up with this theory that somehow it would break up the spores and fragments in such a way as they could be inhaled more readily, penetrate deeper, cause more damage. And I wanted to discuss this with researchers, but of course, that never happened.
Yes, thank you for that term that you used, the Venturi. There's a lot of stuff that we do reference that I guess people would like more information on, and we do have a book. You can buy it on Amazon Kindle. It's really cheap. It's like $5. I just posted it in the comments. We called it the Urban Moldy Dictionary. That is just basically a book of terms that we can go ahead and share with you. It seems like my internet is behaving kind of strange. So I will add that in later after the conversation. All right. So we're coming up on the hour mark here. We're going to take a few more questions and then we're going to go for the day. We can always do this next week. So if you guys did like this session, we can continue doing a community group Q&A every week for you guys. Andrea says, I have so many questions. I know, so did I. So feel free to send us all your questions, exposingmold@gmail.com, or sign up with us, exposingmold.com/consultations to book an appointment. Elias says, what do you guys do for a living? Wondering if back to work after illness. There's so many people that have done mold avoidance and are working. I think COVID has done a great job at making remote work a thing. And so we work on exposing mold, but I do know there are some moldies that do remote work so that way they can be in pristine environments. There's other people that have found places where they feel well and they are able to go back to work. So the key is just trying to get well and get yourself in a better place so that way you can heal. Alaya says, did mold get in your guys' brain as well, like it did mine? This is a question I have too for you, Eric. I feel like it's kind of going over my head. Does mold toxins accumulate in the brain if toxins are able to get into the fat? Since, I mean, the brain is primarily made of fat, correct?
Well, the neuroscientists say unlikely, because if anything of that powerful were to penetrate into the brain itself, you'd probably die. But they say there's immune products, inflammatory cytokines that are so damaging that their presence alone, their response to the inflammatory systemic response, is getting into the brain and causing this kind of inflammation. But we really don't know. I've heard some studies that suggest that fungal infection is actually traveling along the neurons, getting into the nervous system, and that somehow, some way, doctors are unable to find that. I found that hard to believe because I thought, wow, they do autopsies, can't they find this? But with the failure of researchers in so many different ways, that now we have to revisit everything they do because we can't trust any of it.
Yeah, you would think that they would test that. Maybe they are and they're not saying anything. Who knows? It's really interesting. You know, it would be interesting to get a pathologist maybe on the show one day to see what they do and if they're discovering anything. What do you think, Eric?
Absolutely. Look at researchers, how they just make up stuff put up a blog about it, takes off like a rocket, and there's no stopping it.
Yeah. It would
So,
be interesting to find someone, though. If any of you guys are listening today, if you know of any pathologists that have found mold or even relatively interested in the whole mold paradigm, please let us know. Exposingmold@gmail.com. Send us
well,
some.
when I was first pursuing mold toxins, this was before everybody went into lockdown, before they went into hiding. The top researchers were accessible and they liked to talk about their subject matter. So I was talking to immunologists, toxicologists, um, neuropsychiatrists, all kinds of top people that are very difficult to access now. And I got this one guy who said, well, even if you find a toxin, what does that tell you? I go, well, that tells me, it's present, so it's making me sick. And he goes, no, it doesn't. You don't know what the immunological response is. Just finding a toxin does not tell you what your immune system is doing. You need an immunologist for that. It's like, wow. So even if I get tested and find trichothecenes in my blood or urine or anything, that doesn't really tell me the nature of my immune response. No, not at all. So these people that try to imply that they can tell you how sick you ought to be by the amount of toxins in your blood, they're misleading you.
Thank you for that. That was really good, Eric. Elias also says, are your hearts messed up like mine? This is an interesting question, and we actually have a private Patreon group where we provide specialized information and education. We did a presentation, Keely did on basically on Dr. Cheney's work. Getting to the heart of the matter is what we called it. And she really dove into the science of what they know about CFS and how it's affecting the heart. So if you are interested in learning more about what mold is doing to the heart, I would highly suggest signing up for our private members group at patreon.com/exposingmold. It'll be in the comment section below. It's super cheap, so it's nothing crazy. We have so much information there for you guys to check out. And let's take one more question. Well, okay, let's do a few more. We have Tamara Terrell, admit mold is bad. Nah, they never admit it. So I know it's crazy, right? Samaya says it gets into the eyes, lungs, skin, food, urinary tracts. Check my Facebook, Samaya Wood Bryan, specialist confirm mold contracts, brain size. All right. Thanks, Samaya. And Dr. Amen, brain specialist on my Facebook. Yes, it seems like there are some specials coming up in the field. Dr. Amen, also Dr. David Ross. We had him on the show. If you guys want to check out our podcast, he did a great presentation. Please do check out our YouTube channel because he gives a great breakdown on NeuroQuant and his specialized software, NeuroGauge, and how they're using that to check brain injuries from mold. Eric, do you have any last words you'd like to provide to our audience here before we go for the day?
Well, I'd just like to reiterate my feeling that anybody that makes themselves a mold expert has kind of an obligation to collaborate, at least to the extent that if they hear that toxic mold started chronic fatigue syndrome, they have kind of a duty to pass that on.
Absolutely. And I really think it's going to be the patient advocates that really get things rolling here. We need to band as groups and knock down these mold expert and whoever researchers' doors and let them know, hey, we're sick and we need help. So start looking into this stuff. So thank you guys so much for joining us. It was a great gathering. We'll think about what to do next week. We might do a community group Q&A. We're not sure. We will see. But again, we appreciate all of you for tuning in and participating, and we will see you guys next time. Take care, Eric. Have a good night.